First at 10, a dog owner charged in connection to a deadly pit bull attack in Escambia County, Florida. The sheriff's office says that attack happened in February.
And today, charges were filed. Fox 10 News' Shelby Myers now joining us from the breaking news story, or center, I should say, with the story. Shelby, the sheriff says these dogs were known around the neighborhood for being aggressive, right?
Yeah, that's right, Byron and Lenise. And still, the sheriff says the woman who owned the dogs did nothing about it. Now, a man is dead and she's charged with negligent manslaughter. This is Kathleen Taylor. Escambia County Sheriff Chip Simmons says in February, her 3 dogs attacked and killed a 63-year-old man who lived nearby. The sheriff says Taylor has been fined multiple times for not securing her dogs. Neighbors told investigators that the dogs would chase kids on bikes and even bite people. Simmons says Taylor even grabbed one of the aggressive dogs and fled the scene while emergency crews were busy working to try and save the man from that grisly attack.
His injuries were horrific. I can tell you there's a lot of injuries, a lot of bite marks to the face area and to the upper torso. And again, this is still active medical call at some point, and that's what kind of rubs me the wrong way, where the owner of these dogs just takes one dog and then takes off. It does not seem like a reasonable move by an innocent party.
Now, the sheriff says one dog was shot. Taylor turned over another one. It was euthanized, and a judge will determine if she can get the last one back. The sheriff also says while on the run for what the dogs did, Taylor was arrested for drug charges. In the studio tonight, Shelby Myers, Fox 10 News.
From roaming, and still no action. Multiple neighbors tell us of these dogs roaming and biting people on bikes, and they told her and advised her how dangerous these dogs were, but still no action. We received word that an acquaintance notified her to tell her that she should have gotten rid of the dogs when they bit him, and still no action. We also came across a message to Kathleen Taylor from an acquaintance trying to come up with an alibi. In essence, this acquaintance was sent her a message saying, tell them this or tell them that, because they knew that there were problems with Kathleen Taylor and how she handled these dogs. The bottom line is this: if you have a pet, you have the responsibility to secure those animals. If you have any reason to think that your dogs are dangerous, you have an even stronger responsibility to make sure that the people around those dogs are safe. Kathleen Taylor, she chose to have a pet. She took on that responsibility, and she failed in that responsibility, and now a man is dead. What a tragedy. And it could have been avoided. Had she locked the kennels, had she boarded up the holes, had she had them on a leash, had she listened to animal control, had she cared about the kids in the neighborhood or the visitors in her yard. You had that responsibility and you failed, and now a man is dead. A reasonable person would have taken certain steps to properly secure the kennels. Again, what we're talking about here is the difference between a responsible animal owner and one that has failed to do the right things, the reasonable things, and that failure led to an individual being killed. I have John Robinson, as I mentioned earlier. He is over our animal control. He can give you a little better idea on the citations and just the number of calls that were called to North Avenue. John?
Thank you, Sheriff Simmons. We've had multiple encounters with the owner of these animals. We have removed animals from her before, and a lot of times she's just replaced them with new animals. We have had multiple citations given to her. So there's a lot of challenges for us. One of the things that Sheriff Simmons mentioned in his presentation about this case was that we don't have a bite history that's reported to animal control. So please, if you're out there, if you get bitten by an animal, we need those bite cases, those bite reports back to us as well, so we can address that situation. We don't have any bite history of any of her animals in our system, which makes it very difficult for us to follow up with situations like that. We had a lot of roaming calls, a lot of, we call it roaming nuisance calls, where the animals may have been chasing people, things like that. But having those bite reports is extremely important to us to be able to start working towards that. And again, we removed several animals from her, and she just kept replacing them. She doesn't have the proper housing, and she obviously doesn't provide the proper care for them. So those are challenges for us, and obviously public safety is first and foremost. If you call animal control, we're obviously trying to deal with this type of situation, prevent public injuries, things like that. So that's our first and foremost goal of everything we do. Thank you.
Talk about due care and responsibility. When first responders showed up and ambulance crews showed up to render aid to the victim in this case, Ms. Taylor decided she would take one of her dogs and just leave. She wasn't concerned about the safety of this individual. She was only concerned about getting her dog, one of these dogs that were involved, and she leaving the scene. So again, we're talking about responsibility, we're talking about dog ownership, and we're talking about the bare minimum for what you should do. It wasn't like a surprise to her, as John mentioned. They had been there several times. As I mentioned, they were cited, they were warned, they were fined, and still no action was taken, as if they didn't care. And so that's why we're here now, and that's why we end up charging her with negligent manslaughter. If you have any questions for the state attorney's office regarding the charge, we can certainly do that. If you have any more questions, I'll certainly be, or I'll try to answer those right now.
What's going to happen with the dogs?
I have to let John talk about that.
So one of the dogs was shot at the scene the next day as we were trying to pursue them to get them. They were running loose in the neighborhood. The other dogs have been taken in. One of them she's surrendered and we have already been euthanized. And the other dog is on hold until we get a determination from a judge as far as whether she can get the dogs back or not.
I do want to say how well we work together with animal control and with the state attorney's office. This happened in February, and the report is very detailed. There were search warrants checking out some cell phones. There were some samples of blood taken from the dogs. There were a lot of pictures of the crime scene, and I think that what you're seeing here is a result of a well coordinated, cooperative type of investigation that led to this point here, and that's why we have these. These are rather serious charges. This is not an individual that mistakenly lets their dog out. The leash breaks or something like that. We get a lot of calls about animal control, and obviously John gets a lot of calls. But almost always we find a responsible owner. So, oh my gosh, some person let the gate unlocked or something like that. But in this situation, there were many opportunities to fix the fences, to address the situation, and that failed to address the situation, even though neighbors said that they have warned her that there were individuals that were riding bikes that were bitten. There are kids that were being chased. They have, again, a nuisance. The dogs are always roaming free, or they were always roaming free. And again, unfortunately, this is a terrible tragedy, and this, unfortunately, is what happens if you don't take responsibility for your animals. Erin, you care to say anything?
I can just elaborate a little bit on the culpable negligence theory on which the state would be proceeding. And the Florida statutes define culpable negligence as a course of conduct showing reckless disregard for human life or a grossly careless disregard for the safety and welfare of the public. And I think the sheriff has kind of discussed that pattern of ongoing conduct already. Her next court date will be May 26th. That'll be her arraignment. She's been arrested for manslaughter. I expect that the state will formally charge her with the same crime. It's a second-degree felony, punished by up to 15 years state prison.
A unique piece about this is we were getting the warrant signed, and then working on getting it served. My question was, where is she? And we found out that she had been arrested on the 17th for drug charges. So in the meantime, she takes her dogs and she leaves the scene, or she takes her dog and leaves the scene. And then in the meantime, while we're doing the investigation, she's out there running around doing drugs and possessions of drugs at least. And so she went to jail, bonded back out, only be picked up today. So I want to say, kudos, good job to the investigators that handled this case, the ones that went and picked her up. A good job, and I would say my appreciation to animal control and to the state attorney's office, because we work hand in hand with this, and then we work to get to the bottom line and try to figure out exactly what the charge, if any, and in this case it ends up being a manslaughter charge. So any other questions before we call this thing quits?
Are you releasing the name of the victim?
We're not releasing the name of the victim. The victim was 63 years old. I can tell you, 63-year-old male. His injuries were horrific. I can tell you there's a lot of injuries, a lot of bite marks to the face area.
and to the upper torso. And again, this is still active medical call at some point, and that's what kind of rubs me the wrong way, where the owner of these dogs just takes one dog and then takes off. It does not seem like a reasonable move by an innocent party.
Escambia County Sheriff's Office saying a woman has been charged with negligent manslaughter in the death of a 63-year-old after they say he was attacked by her 3 pit bulls. She's identified as the woman on your screen, Kathleen Taylor. Now, this all happened in February on Norris Avenue. Deputies were called for a cardiac arrest. Witnesses say Taylor's 3 dogs were attacking the man who later died. One of the dogs was found the next day, shot by a deputy, which received medical treatment. Another caught a day later. Taylor's arraignment has been set for May 26.